testimony and the questions as I was in another hearing. So you mentioned, I think, that you, in your testimony, that you're concerned about subgroups that would struggle and that you're looking for meaningful action required. I think even you used the term precise intervention. Now, you've been here before. You know one of my interests is dyslexia. 20% of the population is dyslexic. Perhaps 80% of those who are functionally illiterate are dyslexic. And I forget the exact percentage, but something like 60 to 80% of the inmate population in the Texas penal system have dyslexia. We know that illiteracy is a major risk factor for incarceration. So of course, given that you're interested in the subgroups that are struggling and what meaningful action is required, I'm interested in what we're doing specifically regarding dyslexia. And as I say that, I've learned when I ask these questions, I'm given these kind of bromide answers, not speaking to you in particular. But it's this gauzy kind of, we're looking after every child. And we're concerned about dyslexia as part of this large group. I want to know exactly what are we doing for children with dyslexia. Not as a part of a bigger group, but no, what has dyslexia written in the rule? And for this 20% of the population and 80% of those reading below grade level, what are we doing for those, that subgroup that is struggling? What precise intervention, I think, again, to quote your testimony?
Yeah, it's an important, as we've discussed, an important question. I think currently states are using IDA dollars through our results-driven accountability approach to address reading programs that are specifically—
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
We had a panel before, we did QFRs, and I asked specifically what the different people, governors on down to, and I asked specifically what each was doing to screen for dyslexia at grade 1 and to follow up. I didn't get a positive answer for any of them. Not a single entity that we know of is screening for a condition which affects 20% of the children at grade 1. So knowing that that is what they're supposed to do, and going back to yours, what meaningful action required, what precise intervention, I'm not seeing that precise intervention.
Yeah, I think this is an area where technical assistance and professional development are critical. One of the important things that—
So just to continue.
Yeah.
So if we're going to have technical assistance, is there specific, what are you, again, I don't mean to be assaultive, but what is specifically being written for technical assistance that, again, is meaningful and precise regarding dyslexia to that local and state entity?
Yes, well, thanks in part to your leadership. As you know, in the 2016 budget, there's funding for a technical assistance center focused on dyslexia. We are currently developing the request for proposals for that technical assistance center.
Now, technically, that is a center of excellence, but unless, and that's kind of putting out information that would be good if you used it, but unless it's required to be used, it may end up being the equivalent of shelfware.
I think that's a fair worry, and that's why, to the points that Senator Warren made, the accountability provisions, and Senator Casey, the accountability provisions of ESSA are so important. We've got to make sure that districts and states take seriously their responsibility to serve students with disabilities well.
I've learned that those folks respond to what you say. When I speak to folks back home, if you say it, that settles it, boom. So I would go back to how I started. What precisely and meaningfully is being said by your department to instruct them to address the needs of that first grader who may be at risk for lifelong reading below grade level because they have undiagnosed dyslexia? What precisely are y'all asking for?
Yeah, we issued guidance and provided a toolkit last year, as you know, that addressed dyslexia specifically and talked about strategies that districts and states might employ. I think the Technical Assistance Center will add to our capacity there to support states and districts.
Is there any required, meaningful, precise intervention, or is this among a group of things that you can do, we think you should do, and attaboy?
It is options that districts might choose. So, for example, as you know, some districts might choose the Orton-Gillingham approach. Some districts might choose the Wilson approach. There's a variety of options that
fair response. With that variety of options, is it somewhat required that one of the options be used, or is it, listen, if you decide to address, you may go down one of these paths?
Well, I think the challenge is ultimately what's chosen for any individual student is bound up with the IEP process, as you know. And so, again, this is a place where support and professional development for the folks who are involved in those IEP conversations is so critical.
So then one more time, is there any requirement on y'all's part that the district or the state screen a first grader, because you can detect it at grade 1, even kindergarten, screen a first grader for being at risk for dyslexia?
Yeah. There's not a universal screening requirement, as you know, but the IEP team would be expected to address the screening for dyslexia as a part of the assessment of the needs of a student who is struggling. And again, I think one of the challenges here is providing good support and professional development for folks. I think this Technical Assistance Center will help, and I think our results-driven accountability approach will help, because their states understand that their accountability is not merely for paper compliance with IDA, but ensuring meaningful opportunity and progress for students with disabilities.
Well, thank you for this. You've allowed me to interrupt, and I think it's furthered the conversation. I'll end by saying that I think unless you require this to be addressed specifically, dyslexia is one of the things we're looking at. Are you screening? Are you intervening at grade 1, not at grade 3 when it's too late? It's not going to happen. That is the power of your department. I thank you. I yield back.
Thanks.